It's a blend mark. We don't want to polish anything that is in the mid 80s, low 90s. 81? Holy cow. Well, we got a problem here, guys. This car is not safe to do a paint correction on. So now I gotta figure out what the heck I'm gonna do. Do I leave it looking like this with the crappy swirl marks and everything, that every time the sun hits it, it looks horrible? Or do I risk destroying my paint job and having to respray this car? This is my 1991 Toyota MR2 Turbo, and we've been together for about 20 years now, so I guess you could say it's getting pretty serious. Now, I used to pride myself in taking really good care of this car. Heck, it even won a few car shows back in the day. That was best of show at the Kingston MR2 meet in 2006. A couple cobwebs on there. But then life got in the way. Between running a business and getting married and home ownership and becoming a dad, suddenly I found myself not even having enough time to drive the car anymore, let alone detail it. This is the stage where a lot of people just end up giving up and selling their cars. But I'm not willing to do that because this car is a family member and I want my boy to be able to enjoy it as much as I have someday. As a matter of fact, we recently dropped this new design in the store in honor of this car. So if you're interested, go ahead and check it out. Now, in the world of automotive detailing, there's really no such thing as overkill. But what you're about to see here in this video is probably overkill. I want to prove to you that an intense wheels-off detail is not only for supercars and million-dollar detailing shops. This one's for the average gearhead who truly loves their car and they want to make it look amazing while also preserving it for many more years to come. So join me as I spend the next 71 hours cleaning, polishing, and detailing my 34-year-old Toyota. I'm going back to my roots with some old-school detailing techniques that you might not see on the big fancy YouTube channels anymore. You're probably going to want to grab a coffee. We got a lot of work to do. I'm choosing to jack the car up and clean the wheel wells out in the driveway because I'm going to be rolling around on my garage floor working on other parts of the car, so I don't feel like flooding my floor with a pressure washer. It might seem redundant to take the wheels off twice, but it made sense to me. Let's get the elephant out of the room right away, because I can hear your little fingies typing your comments already. Why are you cleaning an already clean car? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, cars always look way better on camera than they do in real life. I can assure you that this car has a thick layer of dirt and dust on it in person, but that's just a trust me bro, I guess. And second, we all have different interpretations of what clean is, depending on the vehicle and the way that it's used. The condition of the MR2 in these before shots here would be considered pretty clean for our Tacoma or our 4Runner, but they're daily drivers that sit outside and they get pretty dirty. Now, I want to get this car as show quality as possible for my own enjoyment, and that means deep cleaning what you might consider an already clean car. Some of you might not care about swirl marks and scratches, and that's cool, I'm happy for you. But there are other people like myself that have a trained eye to spot every little blemish, and taking things to a crazy level like this is enjoyable for us. Since I know the car is going to be sitting for a while after washing it, I'll drive it back and forth a bit to help dry off the brakes so that the rotors don't turn bright orange with rust. Now, as soon as you hit the brakes when you drive it, that rust just flies right off anyways, but then it's going to get thrown onto the nice clean wheels or onto the paint or something. So it just makes more sense to me to just kind of dry them off as much as I can before I park the car. Progress on this job is already pretty slow. In typical fashion, I planned out tasks for each day, and that went out the window on day one. What was I thinking? I have so many more distractions and responsibilities now compared to when I used to polish cars. 20-year-old me would have knocked this out in 3 or 4 days. This is going to take triple that. That's okay. It'll take however long it takes. While my top priorities have changed since my simpler single life, it's still my duty to preserve this car. It's not just my car anymore. It belongs to my family, my son. It's my job to make it survive long enough for him to be able to experience it. This isn't just a car. It's a family member. Alright, day 2, and this is going to be a bit of a short one. I was tied up this morning with some other stuff going on, and my little guy was up quite a bit in the night last night, so to be honest, I'm not feeling especially energetic today. So we're going to pick up with the car, we're going to do some clay barring. I don't think it's going to need much, and ideally I would like to jack it back up, take the wheels off for the second time, and this time I'll do a deep cleaning on the wheels. So we'll see how far we make it today. Again, I'm feeling kind of under the weather, so if I have an early finish, not the end of the world, and we'll pick back up on it tomorrow for a full day, finally. This car doesn't really sit outside, so it won't have much contamination stuck in the paint. Normally, I wouldn't want to risk marring the paint with a clay bar unless it was 100% necessary. But in this case, I'll be polishing the paint afterwards anyways, which will take care of all that. Also, you can see that this is single stage paint. That red on the clay bar is actually the paint from the car coming off. Don't worry, that's normal. The car runs super rich at times, so there's always this carbon buildup on the rear bumper by the exhaust, and part of me is kind of proud of it, kind of race car style, but in this case, it does need to get cleaned up. So using the clay bar minimized it by quite a bit, but this is going to require some more work. Getting this car up on 4 jack stands is a little time consuming due to its low clearance and the fact that the gritty side skirts wrap around the bottom of the rockers. You actually have to cut chunks out of them to be able to reach those jacking points, which means you're kind of restricted with where you can jack the car. A hoist would make this a lot easier, but hey, we work with what we got. Obviously, the faces of these Volk wheels look really good still, considering they're roughly like 18, 19 years old. The inner barrels didn't fare as well. Back when this car was originally built, I didn't understand the importance of cleaning the brake dust off inside here, so the brake dust has baked on over time. All right, well that's a wrap for day 2, and we're off to a little bit of a slow start at first there, but it did pick up. So we ended up getting everything done that we wanted to. We've got the car clay barred, and the wheels are now deep cleaned inside and out. I don't think I've ever cleaned the backside of these wheels that thoroughly before. Fronts I always kept clean, but the backs were years and years of brake dust. Not perfect, we still have some more work to do back there. I'm gonna see if I can get them a little bit gooder. They're not gonna be brand new. These wheels were from 2005. So, you know, you gotta manage your expectations, but definitely a big improvement and ready for ceramic coating after we do a little bit of polishing to them. But I think I'm gonna cut it there. I'm gonna call it a day, and I'll pick back up tomorrow. I love spending time out here. I know this garage is nothing special, but I feel so fortunate to have a place to work comfortably, be alone with my thoughts, but still be readily available if they need me in the house. All right, day 3, and quick alcohol wipe down just to remove any remaining residue from the clay bar process. And now it's time to take a really close look at the car and inspect the condition of the paint, find things that need to be fixed, find things that I need to be careful of that have potential to cause more damage if I hit them with a machine, and overall kind of guess the history of the car, even though in this case it's my own car. I already know all the stories, but if this was a customer car, somebody else, then this is a very important time to put together a case of what's going on with that specific car and what kind of help it needs. All right, it's paint inspection time. We're gonna be using my heartbreaker light, and this is gonna show us scratches and swirls that are present in the paint. So let's take a really close look at what we've got going on here. You want to pay attention to basically the actual light source. I'm not looking at the reflections or anything like that. We're looking at the actual beam of the light in here. And as you can see, it is Swirl Mark City. This hood, I think, is probably the worst on the whole car. We've got pretty gnarly looking stone chip there. It's gonna have to be touched up. Actually, you know what? This driver's fender, it doesn't look that bad. It definitely could use an increase in clarity, but not many swirl marks or anything in there. A couple deeper scratches that are left behind from previous polishing attempts. Some right there. A couple deeper nicks, nothing major. And of course we've got, further down we go, we've got more swirl marks onto the door. Typical swirls, loss of clarity. The door doesn't look too bad either, actually. Definitely have a lot of scratches and swirl marks on the door handle here. And also, I don't know if you can see, inside the door handle in here has a lot of, from fingernails hitting this when you reach in. It's common, pretty much every car has that. Some tape lines along this molding, and I think that that is just compound because this is single stage paint. There's not gonna be a hard cutoff line of a clear coat because this car shouldn't have any clear coat on it. However, I do know that this driver's side rear quarter has been repainted. This is not the original paint on this. How do I know that? Well, again, we've got more tape lines along the wing here. We'll have to do some toothpicking to touch that up. But if you come up here, we will see right there. That's a blend mark. So that tells me this is original paint up here on the roof, and it came down the C-pillar, and right there is where they blew in their repair job. Not a great job done there. They could have done that better. The other reason that I know that this quarter panel has been painted is it's easier to notice when the wheels are on the car, but this little corner right here is actually bent in compared to the passenger side here. It sits flush across this way. And again, it's more noticeable when the wheels are on the car because you have more of a reference point. But if you look there, you can see it is bent in a little bit. So I believe that this car has had an impact on this driver's side rear quarter, and it's been fixed decently, but not amazing. Looks like we got another stone chip down here. Coming around, I need to do a little bit more tidying up on this inner lip here because most of this is stone chips, but there is a little bit of tar and stuff stuck on there. I'm maybe hit that with a clay bar and tidy that up a little bit extra. Let's come around up here while we're on this side. And this, I would say, kind of matches the hood in terms of the swirl marks and the finish. Not great, definitely needs some work. Same with this little front section in front of the T-tops, and then down it's going to be 1-inch polisher in here in between the trim pieces. Side mirrors they could use a little bit of clarity for sure. We've got some leftover compound or wax or something in the letters of the mirror. Hopefully we can clean that up a little bit. Again, all of the top surfaces, so like the top down, hood, engine lid, trunk lid, roof, they all kind of match. They have the worst swirl marks and scratches. Coming back around, you can see here we've got some cracking. It's like a spider web. That's an impact. It has shrunk and popped back out. That's what causes that. And back here, trunk lid looks decent. Again, mostly clarity. You have to do some finger polishing around the MR2 badge here. These taillights look like crap. They're oxidized in the inside corners here, so I'm going to need to restore these and polish these up. That does not look great at all, so we need to work on that. And some more scratches, and this is a bigger scar right here. So this car got rear-ended because I was driving one day, I was at a stop sign, and a lady bumped right into the back of me, and she just wasn't paying attention. It was just a really light tap, but the car was rear-ended. So that's what caused that. That's what caused the kind of the shrink cracking in the paint on the other side. This bumper has been bumped. Deeper scratch here that has already been touched up. Nothing I can do about that. That's a really deep one. There are a couple of deeper scratches that have the edges rounded off that I had polished this before, and that's as far as I could take it. A few years ago, a garage door hit. It broke and landed on top of the back of the car, left some big scuffs in the spoiler and a big one on the trunk lid. I'm trying to find, yeah, there's some bigger ones in there. That is too far gone. Nothing I can do about that. This door is a little bit more swirled up than the other side was. Once again, we need to do quite a bit of work on that door handle, probably some finger polishing and stuff. Another interesting thing is these trim pieces on the door, the window seal. You can see that looks like wear to me. It looks kind of oxidized, but also maybe just worn right out. I'm gonna see what I can do about maybe polishing that by hand and bringing that back with a little compound or something. You can see here, it's supposed to be shiny black plastic like that. And you come around, you can see it's just beaten down by the sunshine. Realistically, it should probably be replaced. If I could find these trim pieces available, maybe I would do that. I'll see if I can save them first, because that's kind of the name of the game with these classic cars. Another ugly tape line here, we'll get that with a toothpick. Some deeper scratches on this door, but kind of matches the rest of the car. This mirror is kind of faded. This is almost the wrong shade of red. I don't know if that's been painted before or something. Once again, we have really ugly rubbing compound or wax or something stuck in those letters. Try and clean that up. Here, this is something very interesting to me. That looks to me like another blend mark. So we're gonna have to investigate this panel further because that's new to me. I haven't noticed that before. That looks just like the blend mark on the C-pillar, which leads me to believe that this passenger front fender has had some kind of paint work done to it. So we'll take some paint depth readings next with a gauge and investigate further. This front bumper, I already know what I'm gonna find. It is clapped out, it is beat up. especially this front lip. This front lip has a story. It's got many stone chips, scratches. Actually has chunks taken right out of it where the paint has been ripped right off. I'm gonna see what I can do about filling those in and touching them up as much as I can, at least the bigger ones. I think I'm gonna pull this badge off so that I can polish in behind there a little more thoroughly. Okay, lights back on. Time for some paint readings. Let's get the gauge out and take a look at how thin this paint is. All right, so for starters, we wanna get an idea of paint thickness. Go into a door jamb. And this is where we're gonna start to do our investigation, because typically inside the doors and the door jambs is always the thinnest paint, because manufacturers know they don't have to spray too much in here. It doesn't see the elements, so they just do the bare minimum to save costs. So you can see we're averaging, I would say, like maybe high 80s in there. And if that's the thinnest paint, then we need to make sure the rest of this car, we don't want to polish anything that is in the, mid 80s, low 90s. So we'll go around and check each panel individually. So this is, the side of the hood is between 110, 130 microns. That's fairly normal, that's not bad. I really want to see what's going on here with this fender though, because I have reason to believe this might have paint work. So on this side of the blend mark, we're in the 130s. It's getting thicker and thicker as we head this direction. 193, 218. Okay, so something has definitely happened on this fender. High 200s. Wow, that's over 1,000 microns. 500. So typically when you see something thicker, that's too thick for the gauge to even read right there. So this area, for some reason, is super thick. And this is magnetic, this reads off of the metal. So this includes primer, paint, etc. It also includes Bondo and filler. And that, when you see, like, typically aftermarket paint is gonna be thicker than factory paint because it's applied by hand. But when you see a really thick spot, there's probably body filler in here. So something happened on this corner of this front fender. And then they sprayed it and they blended it in over here to make it blend in with the panel beside it so you don't see a sharp cutoff line like I have on my Tacoma. So in real time, guys, I just found out that my car has more paint work done to it than I originally knew about. This is exactly why it's important to do your investigation before you polish a car. Let's come up here onto the top. 113. It's getting pretty thin. 102. You can see in most spots on this rear quarter, it's actually twice as thick as the rest of the car. So we know there's been paint work on this rear fender. Remember, this is where the blend mark is up here. Ooh, 97. Oh boy. That's barely thicker than the door jamb. 96. 81. Holy cow. Well, we got a problem here, guys. This is too thin in some spots to safely do a paint correction. If I buzz the paint down too thin after polishing it again, there's nothing left. Every time you polish a car, you're removing some paint. When you remove a scratch, you're not pulling it out of the paint. You're finding the lowest part of the scratch and taking a layer of the paint surrounding it down until it's flush, and then the scratch disappears. So you're removing paint every time you polish your car. Realistically, this car is not safe to do a paint correction on. So now I gotta figure out what the heck I'm gonna do, because do I leave it looking like this with the crappy swirl marks and everything, that every time the sun hits it, it looks horrible? Or do I risk destroying my paint job and having to respray this car? I gotta figure this out. We have very, very thin paint in some spots. In some spots, it's just as thin as the door jamb, which is a 100% no-go for paint correction. Other spots are safe enough that I could compound and polish if I wanted to. The other issue is that this car has incredibly soft single stage paint. You can scratch it just by rubbing your fingertip on it. So that means that if it's really soft, we'll remove it at a very fast rate. Normally, I would use sort of a two-step process. I would start with a compound, something like this, Meguiar's M100 and a microfiber pad or wool pad, and follow that up with a gentle refining polish like M205 here. Two-stage process. Then after that, you'd have to either wax it, seal it, put a ceramic coating on. The other option here is I have lithium seal and squeal. This is considered like a cleaner wax, an all-in-one polish, if you will. Most people would apply this by hand. It's like a wax that cleans the paint while you wax a little bit. So it's more than just a wax. And I actually spoke to a rep at Lithium who told me that this is actually formulated to work really good on single-stage paints, which is a perfect fit. Normally, this is not going to fix your swirls and scratches very much, especially if you apply it by hand. However, I'm thinking outside of the box here. I'm thinking off-label usage. Because this paint is so sensitive, as soon as I touch it with a machine polisher, no matter what I put on there, it's gonna have a certain level of correction just because it's so easy to scratch. So I think the machine action, followed by there is some abrasion in the pad itself, with a really gentle product like this, might actually give me paint correction results, but all in one step. So the other benefit is I can wipe the car one less time, because when I wipe this off, it's now protected, it's done. The issue is I don't know what kind of a result this is gonna give me. I don't know if this is gonna do a good enough job at fixing all the scratches and the swirls, that, especially on the hood of the car and on the roof. I am in one dilly of a pickle here, friends. My gut tells me leave it up to the car. Let's see how the car responds. The car is gonna tell me what it needs in order to look good. So we're gonna start with the least aggressive method. Let's throw this on a polishing, like a foam pad, nice and gentle, slower speeds, and see what kind of a correction we get out of it. And if it's not good enough, we got no choice but to step it up to something more aggressive. I definitely won't use something like M100. This is a machine gun. We're looking for more of a sniper rifle here, I think. So yeah, let's see what happens with a quick test. That's how you know you got single stage paint. It's gonna look like a dang bloodbath in here. All right, test results are in, and I'll show you what we've got so far. So I just polished kind of this section right here. And actually you'll see I pulled the washer fluid nozzles just so I can polish straight across that instead of trying to tape them off and go around them. So the problem is the front end of this car is kind of peppered with like millions of tiny little stone chips. So you can see kind of over here, swirl marks, scratches, haziness. And then here it's a little more crisp and all you see is just the stone chips, I guess you can say. So this isn't a real correction. It's more just an improvement, but it's an improvement that I can do many times to this car without fear of burning through the paint. So I feel like in terms of longevity, this is maybe the smarter move. Alright, a little pro tip for you guys here. Just tape off each individual panel that you're working on. You don't have to tape off the whole entire car because A, you're only polishing in one spot at a time, and B, this is going to keep your garbage can from filling up with huge clumps of tape because you can actually reuse it then. Before I get going on the roof there, check this out. I found my old detailing notes from like 9 or 10 years ago. This is my old detailing notebook. That was an NSX. Good project right there. looks pretty good. I'm gonna hit it one more time with the 1" right here. Got a little bit more to do, a little bit of oxidation along this kind of leading edge here. One more quick pass, let's see what we can do with that. See, we still have the blend mark here, but there's not much we can do about that. I don't want to push that too hard. We also got up onto this top little shelf. Nice and consistent so it matches the rest of the bigger panels. Give you an idea of before and after. This is obviously freshly polished and this is still all swirled up and scratched. So we're gonna move here next. Onto the engine lid, and I'm gonna be using the 3" pad around this top part here, and then I can use the larger pad down here, no problem. But the issue here is that while I can fit the 3" in this section, my concern is getting tight to this side here, as well as polishing the inside of this like sort of buttress, whatever you want to call it. So my answer is I think I'm gonna remove these side panels and then I can polish this off the car and I can get in below this edge so I can polish further than where this cutoff is to keep the correction nice and tight. So you're not gonna see, you know, either a little bit of remaining scratches and dullness where the pad won't reach, or the worst case would be if the backing plate, like this part right here, if that is bumping up against the inside panel here, it's actually gonna cause damage along this inside edge. So take this off real quick. I guess I should probably show you the tools that I'm using here, the polishers. My main bread and butter, as usual, is the Griot's Garage G21. This is a long throw, big 21mm orbit. This is obviously a dual action machine. I'm using the largest pads that I have, which are, I think these are 7 inches. I could be wrong, I believe they're 7 inches. The idea is I want to basically spread out the residue as much as possible because residue is abrasive just like a hardcore compound. So I'm trying to be as gentle with this as possible. So I'm trying to use this everywhere I can on the car as much as possible because with a dual action machine, the larger the pad, the less aggressive it is. So for the tighter spots and the edges and stuff, this is a old school Griot's Garage short throw polisher. And I've converted this down to a 3" backing plate so I can use these smaller 4" pads. And then also we got the Rupa's Hybrid Nano. This is my little 1" polisher. Comes in very handy for the small spots. And you can see by all of the bloodshed on these pads that even though this is essentially like a cleaner wax or an all-in-one polish, it is still removing material because the red is coming from the car and it is now on my polishing pads. So it just goes to show how cautious you have to be with this kind of stuff. Let's take a look at, I just finished the hood here, what the end result looks like. And I'm pleased with that. I think for original single stage, especially really soft single stage, I think that's good. I'm gonna leave it with that. Oof. Gotta get to my happy place. Gotta get to my happy place. All right, 9 degrees, I don't know. I told myself that I was gonna wait till the winter time to turn this heater on up here, but why not be comfortable while I'm working? Why not just do it now? It's a cold, rainy day out there, so I'm doing it. Just to warm it up a little bit. I'm just polishing the exhaust by hand because it really doesn't have a ton of oxidation built up. It's mostly just water spots. I found that the metal polish was leaving behind a little bit of residue, so you'll see me spraying a rinseless wash on it afterwards. This seemed to give a slightly shinier end result. When you look through the wheel well, you can see the other side of the muffler, so that means it needs to be polished too. You can hear the torrential downpour hitting the roof of the garage. Definitely a good day to be working inside. Once again, the backside of the exhaust can be seen through the other wheel well, so it needs to be tidied up too. Not a huge before and after result here, but it looks better. The rest of the exhaust, however, is looking awesome now. This will complement the freshly polished paint nicely. Alright, so we do have to kind of manage our expectations here with these wheel wells because this is an old car with an old build on it. We're not going to get a perfect result. These coilovers were used when I bought them, so they were already a little bit corroded and torn up. And, you know, like the underbody is just, it's old. So I'm working my way out. I'm starting from the inside and I'm spraying Meguiar's hyper dressing. This is going to dress all of this stuff. This is a water-based dressing, so it's not going to stain or attract too much dirt or anything to anything. So I'm going to spray this on pretty good and get in everywhere with it. And then once I make a nice mess with this stuff, I'm going to try and clean up after myself a little bit here, work my way outwards. So I got a bunch on this coil over. This needs to be wiped off, and as well these parts that I'm going to be polishing. So I'm going to let the rest of this just kind of drip and let it run down. It's going to look kind of runny, look kind of crappy. As you can see, it's kind of like a milky consistency. That's okay. I'm just going to let it work its way in, dry up a little bit, and then I'll come in and knock down a little bit of the wetness. Now we're going to jump into some metal polishing here, just a little bit on the coilover. There's only so much you can do, but I do want to see if I can improve it a little bit. It's a little bit difficult when I'm trying to look past a GoPro in front of my eyes, but as usual, guys, I'm doing what I can to get you guys some entertaining content in hopes that maybe someday we become great friends and you buy a t-shirt from me. You know? I don't ask for much. So I'm just gonna get in here and hand polish as much as I can. This is not a concourse job by any means. Now at this point, once that hyperdressing has had a chance to kind of run into all the cracks and stuff that I want it to seep into, at least this plastic part, this inner fender liner, I'm gonna just wipe this down gently just to knock it down a little bit so it's not just super wet and dripping, as well as anywhere else where it's kind of pooling. I don't want it just to keep on dripping on everything. Just to get a little bit more of a consistent finish. It's less streaky this way. All the textured stuff, I'm just gonna let that dry. It has a bit of a white look to it right now, but it will dry and then it's just gonna have sort of a satin finish. So I think we'll leave it here like this. It's important to do this kind of stuff to create contrast, especially when we can't polish the paint to perfection on a project like this. We want to have the blacks as black and clean as possible so that in comparison, the paint looks as bright and shiny as possible. Kind of tricks your eyes a little bit. Next, seems like a bit of a wasted step, but it is getting some results here. I'm just gonna clay the inside of these side skirts a little bit because there is a little bit of tar and contaminants stuck on here, so it helps to be able to pull it off a little bit with the clay bar. As you can see, it's still, it's not super great, so one last attempt. What we're gonna do is a little bit of polish. We're gonna polish by hand in here just to see if we can tidy it up a little bit. So here's the end result. We're not looking at perfection here by any means, but it does look quite a bit better, much more tidy and looked after. This is going to create a nice amount of contrast, maybe behind the wheel, because these wheels are large 5 spokes, so you can see past them and you can see in behind here. So this needs to be clean, black, and polished if possible. So I think we're at the point of diminishing returns. I could spend more time on this trying to get things as perfect as possible, but at some point you have to move on. So I think I have all 4 wheel wells done, and we're going to call this good and move on to the next project. The engine bay hadn't really been touched for quite a while, so it had some dirt and grime built up on it. On a regular modern car, I have no problem hitting it with a pressure washer and scrubbing away. But this car has 2 things going against it. It's old, and it's highly modified with aftermarket parts. I don't have a ton of confidence in it being waterproof, unlike a modern car, so I'm going to use a steam cleaner instead. This is a much slower process, but it allows me to avoid introducing too much moisture into the engine bay. I'm using the same Meguiar's hyper dressing that I used in the wheel wells with the same technique too. Spray everything down, then wipe it off any places that I don't want it. The intake and intercooler piping are all powder coated, so I polish them by hand with a little compound to spruce them up a little bit. The final touch was to do some metal polishing on the intake manifold, fuel rail, fuel pressure regulator, throttle body, and the wastegate. The KO Racing fan shroud had a ton of grime built up on it, so I actually wiped it down with a degreaser first before following up with a glass cleaner to get back to a mirror finish. The end result is a clean but honest engine bay. This car has always had more of an industrial looking bay rather than like a fancy show car style wire tuck with fresh paint and everything, so I think this look suits it pretty well. Well, I have run into a little bit of a problem here, and that's normal for this kind of work. You know, you kind of have to roll with the punches, especially with an older car like this. The end result that I got on this rear passenger fender is awesome. Super happy with it. I think it looks fantastic, really. Better than I was expecting, which is great. But this door, I haven't worked on this yet, and I'm looking at it, and I already can tell that the process that I'm using on the rest of the car is not going to get me a good result here. This, for some reason, the panels in this car are pretty inconsistent. Some of them are fairly scratch-free, and others, like this one, are in much worse shape. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to whip out the compound and a microfiber cutting pad on this, just for this door, and then I'm going to do a second step to follow up with that, with the process that I'm doing on the rest of the car to use as sort of like a refinement step, because the more aggressive compounding is going to create more of a haze and leave it behind. So I'm gonna have to polish out the clarity of that after the fact, but there's too many deeper scratches in this door for me to just leave it the way that it is and just make this a shiny version of what it is. I'm gonna add a little bit of extra time to the job here, but I'm gonna buzz this down pretty quick. I'm gonna go as mild with it as possible, so I'm gonna be moving fast, trying to avoid as much heat as I can. And I measured it again with the depth gauge to make sure that I have enough material here to work with, and it is fairly safe to polish this door. So we're gonna go ahead and get this looking proper, because it's still, I understand I've got to manage my expectations here. I'm not chasing perfection on this car, but it does still have to be done properly. And if I'm gonna put my name on it, I want to be proud of the end result, and I'm not gonna be proud if this door is not done right. Here you can see the haze that's left behind from the compounding process. In order to be aggressive enough to remove the scratches, it also leaves a cloudy finish. So it'll get taken care of by a second step of polishing or refinement to bring back the gloss and essentially repair the minor damage that I had to create in order to remove the scratches. Oh yeah. Now we're talking. Oh yes. Here's some real-world detailing that not a lot of people talk about. Sometimes you find yourself laying on your back on a cement floor for hours in order to get a good look at certain panels from the proper angle. Needless to say, a hoist would definitely be a nice thing to have. I'm not showing a whole ton of the polishing process because it gets a little mundane and boring to watch, but this accounts for the vast majority of the time spent on a project like this. I was hoping the fibers of a cutting pad would pull some of the old wax and compound out of the letters on the mirrors here, but it looks like I'll be coming back here with a toothpick later. At this point, I was running pretty far behind schedule, so I decided to come back out here to work later into the night in hopes of catching up. These door handles were pretty badly scratched, so they required some heavier compounding. I tried to fit my 1-inch polisher in where I could, but in the end, I had to finger polish inside with a towel. Time consuming, but it's effective. This is clearly a stock body car. It doesn't have any aftermarket fender flares or wide body or anything like that, right? But you can kind of see how the fenders still flare out a bit, which creates sort of a valley around them. I had to use a smaller 3-inch pad in order to reach in tight there. This is a good example of how the size of your machine that you need to use isn't solely decided by the physical space that you have to fit it into. Sometimes it's a matter of getting enough surface area on a contour. There's something so rewarding about polishing a car. Turning something from oxidized, dull, and scratched into a fresh, glossy finish is incredibly satisfying. The buffer drowns out the constant noise of real life. It's one of the few times I can forget about my problems or my stressors. Just focus on the task at hand, bring clarity back to this paint job by working inch by inch. Time almost stands still, which is something I always wish for in my life. I need to find a pause button so I can stop and catch my breath. I guess this is the closest I can get to that. I could attempt to polish inside the badges with my fingertip, but there's no way to get in there properly for a good result. So off they come. This will allow me to polish right across the flat panel. These came off pretty easy with a heat gun and some fishing line. Gotta be careful not to overheat the surrounding paint, burn the emblem, or even break it while trying to peel it off. These are hard to find, and if you do, they're pretty expensive to replace. The result after using the 7-inch pad was decent, but I wanted to get it even better. So I stepped down to the 3-inch for another pass, and man, it made a big difference. Remember that with a dual action machine, the smaller the pad, the more aggressive it cuts. I replaced the old adhesive with 3M automotive grade double-sided tape and put it back on. Originally, I had tape on the bumper to help center it when I reinstalled the badge, but I had forgotten that these have locating pins on them, so that wasn't an issue at all. You might be wondering why I'm not using one of those eraser wheels on a drill. That's because this paint is so sensitive, it would definitely cause damage that I would need to polish out. Instead, I continue to heat it up and pull at it carefully with a plastic razor blade. This is tedious, but it's a safer method in this case. Alright, originally I was only going to take this Toyota badge off the back here because these ones I was a little bit concerned about if they were going to break coming off, because they are kind of known for breaking fairly easily, but they're actually coming off really easy. I got this one off already. So what I'm doing is I'm heating the badge up with a heat gun, using fishing line to carefully scrape it away, and then pulling the emblem off, and then I'm taking the remaining adhesive off with, again, the heat gun and this little plastic razor blade here. To avoid scratching the paint as much as possible. Unfortunately, it is kind of inevitable, but the good news is I'm doing this because I'm going to compound and polish behind here. So these little nicks that you can see, I don't know if this is showing up on camera, this is just from the fishing line. That's how soft this paint is. Just from rubbing it against there trying to get the badge off. But again, I'm going to be polishing this all up nicely. So. Peeling off the remaining old adhesive from the back of the badges was time consuming, and once again, I had to be super careful to avoid breaking them. So I grabbed a coffee and took my time. Shout out to Jim at White Details. Check out his channel if you love watching these detailing videos. Alright, so here we have our freshly polished and retaped badges. So you can see I've got some nice automotive grade 3M double-sided tape on the back here. So we can just peel this off. And there we go. Just like a brand new badge from Toyota, except it's the original one. Ta-da! Alright, time for the satisfying part. Alright, I'm going to show you why you take the badges off to do stuff like that. See how we've got tight in between the letters? You can never do that with just finger polishing or a toothpick or hopes and dreams 1-inch polisher. It's just not going to happen. You can't get into those tight corners. So the idea is you take the badge off and then you have a nice flat surface all the way across to polish, and then this is the end result. You get something that many people are not willing to do. And it all matters. Alright, well, that is a wrap for polishing the paint on the MR2 here, and you'd think that we would be pretty much done then, right? Put it all back together, let's go have some fun, enjoy the car, but we got a lot more work still to do. I'm going to take a break from polishing paint though. I'm going to do the wheels next. I'm going to clean up the wheels, polish, ceramic coat them, get them back on the car. And then we're going to do some polishing again. Door jams, stuff like that. Here, I'll show you. If it's red, it needs to be polished. So I'm going to get a little 1-inch in here, up in the door jamb. Also, these types of spots in here, as well as in here. But we're going to take a break from staring at red paint for a little while and jump on some wheels. You probably think I'm crazy for polishing my wheels, and you'd probably be right. But there are a couple reasons why I'm polishing them, and it's not just about removing scratches. Polishing will indeed bring back some gloss and clarity, but the main reason is because the scrubbing action will deep clean them so that they're prepped for ceramic coating. Remember, these wheels have been uncoated for over 18, 19 years, and I need to get them as clean as possible before applying a coating to them. Well, we've got an unseasonably nice day here today, and as much as I would love to open up the big garage door and let all that nice warm air come in, we got also a pretty strong wind blowing leaves up the driveway, potentially into the garage, which is obviously not helpful for detailing. So, windows open, best I can do, and no complaints, because anytime you can wear a t-shirt and shorts in November, you're doing pretty good. So, today, I'm going to get on ceramic coating these wheels, and I'm going to be using my favorite ceramic coating for wheels, which is G-Technic C5. This stuff is great, super easy to apply. It's basically wax on, wax off, but ceramic coated version. I'm going to be polishing the strut tower bars as well and ceramic coating them with the same coating as well. I'm also going to be polishing up these lug nuts as well because I feel like there's some room for improvement there. These are pretty unique TRD lug nuts. Whether they're actual real TRD parts or not, they're from Magard, and I'm not sure. I got them from a Chinese Toyota dealership many years ago. So I don't know if you know anything about these. Are they legit? I have questions, but they look nice. They look really nice with the wheels. So polish those up. Plan is to get the wheels back on the car today because I'm sick of it looking like a spaceship. So let's get to work. Well, I thought I had turned a corner and I was putting parts back on the car finally because I just put the wheels back on and they're looking fantastic, by the way. But I find myself going down the rabbit hole again, and I'm planning on cleaning, polishing, and coating the TRD cross brace in the engine bay. So if I'm gonna do that, I may as well do the front strut tower bar too. So I'm gonna take this off real quick, clean it up, polish it up, ceramic coat it, and then they'll be ready to go back on. Also, we still have these little trim panels that go on the side of the engine lid. I need to polish those up before I put them back on the car. And then a little bit more polishing work to do. I gotta clean up the lights. So all that's left to do is everything. Car's looking good though. Onto the taillights, and you can see the one on the left is dull and hazy. It almost has like a white tinge to it. The one on the right has a rich, glossy look to it. Here's how I did it. I started out polishing by hand because the worst of the cloudiness was tight inside the edge. Then I worked my way out from the edge with a 1-inch microfiber cutting pad and some compound. Finally, I hit them with a finishing polish on a foam pad to bring out that remaining shine. Oh, and I hand polished the top edge of the black plastic since that's what you see when you open the trunk. Just like the rest of the car, they're not brand new, but they look really good now. Here's another before and after with the top and bottom. Under the hood, there was a thick layer of dust on everything since I haven't even wiped it down in months. Starting from the top, I used the same polish that I used on the paint on the inside of the hood. Since this is technically a cleaner wax, it gets rid of any water stains and adds just the right amount of shine. And as you can see by the red stain on the towel, this is still removing a tiny amount of paint despite being incredibly gentle. Next up, it's time to break out the steam again to clean the strut towers and in behind the fuse box and stuff like that. The dust had really accumulated on the stereo amp, so that needed some attention. Have you ever watched somebody do a 2-step paint correction on a stereo amplifier before? Well, you're about to. All of the black plastic under the hood wasn't necessarily dull or damaged, but it needed a little extra sheen. I didn't want it to look wet and glossy like somebody dumped a bottle of Armor All on it. I just wanted a rich, black appearance. Lithium trim serum did exactly what I wanted. Next, I conditioned the leather trim that surrounds the amp. This was a little dried out, so I was hoping the conditioner would soak in a little bit. I think it did a decent job, so we'll call that a win. Here's a before and after of the wiper cowl. Remember, I cleaned it thoroughly early on during the washing stage, so now it just needed to be restored with trim serum. All right, it's finally time to put Humpty Dumpty back together. I'm actually really looking forward to putting all these pieces back on the car, and I think it's gonna be really rewarding, really satisfying. So we're just gonna hit it all in one shot. Well, we are nearing the end of the project here, and I figure we probably got about another day or so. I got the car all reassembled, it's all put back together into one whole unit, and tomorrow morning I'll be doing some touch-up paint. I'm going to detail the interior, and then we're going to do a final coat of wax on it as well. And I think we should be good to go then at that point. See you in the morning. So you're probably wondering why you just watched me brush some touch-up paint on this lip instead of getting it resprayed. Isn't that a hack job? And yeah, you would be right. It's not the right way to do it. This lip is damaged and it needs to be repainted properly. But I feel like when older cars get to be this age, they almost always all have a story to tell, or many stories to tell. In this case, many years ago, I couldn't get insurance on this car due to excessive modifications that were done to it. And I was trying to get it to winter storage for the year. I couldn't drive it on the street. I was trying to load it on a car trailer. I was all frustrated and flustered. And I smoked the ramps of the trailer with the front lip. I didn't have the clearance and scratched up the lip pretty badly. So there's always been these sort of white, bare fiberglass marks underneath the car. And when I take a picture or shoot a video out at a low angle, it's noticeable. So I did want to touch it up a little bit to make it less obvious and make it so I don't have to Photoshop every image of the front end of this car. But I didn't necessarily want to fix it completely because I feel like the stories of a car add to its character. And I'm not quite ready to just delete that part of the car's history. With detailing, it's difficult to know when to chase perfection and when to allow a car to tell its story. And I feel like sometimes you want to fix things properly, sometimes you want to just keep the car honest and give it some character. So that's what I'm doing here. Maybe someday I'll get the lip properly repaired, the fiberglass fixed, and get it resprayed by a body shop. But for now, I'm just touching it up a little bit. So at this stage in the detail, it's time to do some tooth picking. basically any time that you've been polishing a car, you're gonna have spent compound and polish, tape lines, stuff like that to deal with. This car's got all kinds of that all over the place. So there's like a gob of compound I found in here somewhere from somebody else that has polished the car. The letters on the mirrors have old compound or wax or something stuck in them. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a matter of going through the entire car and basically just toothpicking your way to success. So using a literal toothpick, or for bigger spots, I'll actually take a cloth, and this is a bamboo cocktail skewer, and I'll wrap this up inside the cloth, kind of like this, and just get into all the little cracks and crevices and try to clean up any of the remaining compound and stuff like that, because it's gonna really stand out now that we've got the rest of the car looking so good. Tedious work, but these are the kind of things that make all the difference in the end result. Let's get to it. All right, well, it's been a day. This camera has been giving me problems. I had to update the firmware and stuff, but I think we're back in action now. I lost a lot of time due to that. So next up, we're gonna do the interior, and you know, interiors are not really camera friendly for filming and stuff, so I'm not sure how much I'm gonna be able to film, but there's not a whole lot that needs to be done in here. It's pretty clean. I keep it pretty clean and tidy in here, and it's just a little bit of a dusting. I am going to do like a deep clean on the floor mats. Main thing is I'm going to condition and treat these leather seats. So I talked about this in a previous video about the truth about leather conditioners and how they don't actually do anything, except for if it's old weathered leather and you have a product that's meant to stay on the surface for a long time. And that's the exact case with this car here today. As much as I'd love to do a crazy deep cleaning of the interior with brushes and fancy looking suds, it just didn't need it. There was a light layer of dust on the panels and that's about it, so I saved some time by using an all-in-one cleaner and protectant product on a rag. Normally I prefer to use separate products, but in this case, for a car like this, I'm not worried too much about having the ultimate protection. I did do a deeper cleaning on the seats though, so that they would be ready to accept the leather conditioner as much as possible. For the leather, I used lithium hide rehab and I put it on pretty thick. I wanted it to absorb as much as possible since the clear coat on these seats was pretty worn out. Normally you would come back after a few minutes to wipe off the excess, but I really wanted to saturate these, so I left it. As a matter of fact, I came back later and did a second application too. The end result isn't wet or greasy looking, it's just a nice matte finish, the way automotive leather is supposed to look. At first glance, you might think that these floor mats just need a quick vacuuming, but they're actually dirtier than they look. So I sprayed some all-purpose cleaner on them, scrubbed them with a drill brush, and then used an extractor with just water in it to pull up any dirt and the remaining cleaner. You can see how dark black the driver's side mat looks compared to the before shot of the passenger mat, and it's worth noting that the driver's side was far dirtier than the passenger too. So I think we can all agree that these mats did not look very dirty to begin with. It looked like they could just use a quick little vacuuming and it kind of matched the rest of the interior. So this is the end result that I've got here, and they look really nice, of course. But they weren't as clean of a starting point as you might have thought, because here's the water that came out of the carpet extractor. Look at that. That was just in the floor mats. So don't be deceived. If you think your carpets in your car are clean, you might have this hiding in there and you didn't even know it until you actually extract it out. So interesting stuff, also kind of gross. After I was done making a mess with cleaners and other products, I gave the glass a good cleaning. Everyone has their own process for this, but I like to use 2 towels. I follow up with a second dry one in order to get a streak-free finish. Let me know if you want to learn more about glass cleaning, and maybe I'll make a video about it in the future. The Alcantara on the personal steering wheel was a bit dirty, but not too bad. I'm not a fan of getting suede or Alcantara wet if I don't absolutely have to, so I didn't use a cleaner on it. I feel like sometimes getting this material wet does more harm than good. Instead, I just use a brush to dust off any dead skin from my hands, I know, yuck, and stand the fibers back up so it looks fresh again. The end result isn't perfect, but it matches the condition of the rest of the car, and that was the goal here. It's time to fill the garage with the smell of coffee and carnauba wax. Normally when someone mentions a hand wax, it simply describes applying wax manually rather than using a polisher to spread it around. Not this time. This is an old school technique that has become a completely lost art. I've only seen a handful of people ever talk about it online. But since this car is from a different era, with a single stage old school paint system, I think it makes sense to treat it as such. Spreading wax with your hands allows your body heat to warm it up and make it even more butter-like when you spread it. The reason I'm doing it on this car is because it's the most gentle way to apply a coat of carnauba on the paint. When you use an applicator, foam, microfiber, whatever, it doesn't matter, you can't feel what's going on. There's an object between your hand and the paint. By using your bare hands, you can feel everything. So if some kind of contamination falls on the paint, you can stop immediately rather than unknowingly scratch the rest of your car with it stuck in your applicator. Now, I understand this isn't for everyone. I'll be honest, the novelty of it is part of the reason why I'm doing it. It just seems like a fitting way to wrap up this project on a car that I have a tremendous level of respect for. In a modern world filled with fancy ceramic coatings and self-healing films, I think it's important for us to continue sharing the skill set and techniques from the OGs that came before us. Why didn't I ceramic coat this car? Well, quite frankly, it doesn't need it. It's garage kept, and if I drive it in bad weather, it's going to try to kill me. This car wouldn't benefit from the protection found in a ceramic coating. Not to mention, there's a good chance that this sensitive paint would make applying a coating a nightmare. Finally, I don't care who you are, but nothing beats the look, smell, and experience of applying a nice layer of carnauba wax. After all that hard work, I don't want to drive it and risk getting it dirty again. This thing is probably just going to sit in the garage so it looks perfect for as long as possible. Nah, screw that. Cars are meant to be driven and enjoyed. Some of my fondest memories came from driving this car, and dang it, I want to make more. There's nothing quite like the feeling of driving a freshly detailed car. You can always clean it up again, plus all the protection left behind from the detailing process will make it easier to look after. Man, I can't wait to take Eva out for a date in this car now. The project is complete. 3 weeks, 71 hours, tons of backbreaking work. It was all worth it to be able to share my love for this car with the world. It was a great chance to remind myself of what I'm capable of and what this car has the potential to look like. It still has scars, bruises, and permanent damage, just like me. I think it's perfect. Look in here. What's that? Is your car nice and shiny? Look at it. What do you think? Yeah.
Where am I allowed to turn?
Nothing. It's gonna be a good day, but don't stall it. Don't stall it. There's a pretty girl in the car. Don't stall it.